Hi there, it's Kristen from k.becca, and in this video I'll show you how easy it is to make your own custom hot foil details and embellishments with the Heidi Swapp Minc and Minc Reactive Mist. In one of my previous videos, I tested out both the Minc Reactive Paint and Minc Reactive Mist, and a link to that video should be popping up right about now if you want to go and check it out before watching this video. After I posted the earlier video, a few of you asked whether you can use a paintbrush with the Minc Reactive Mist like you can with the Reactive Paint, and the answer to that is yes. You can definitely use a paintbrush with the Reactive Mist. And in today's project, we'll be exploring some of the things that you can do by using a paintbrush to paint with the mist. The first thing that I'm going to do is place a paper towel on my work surface. This is where I'll set the spray nozzle after I remove it from the bottle of Reactive Mist. I'm doing this because the mist is a lot like glue, and I don't want to have to clean it from my work surface because it gets pretty sticky and tacky as it starts to dry. When I unscrew the nozzle from the bottle, you'll notice that there's a little plastic piece there with a hexagon cutout in the center. I'll remove that since the opening is a little small for the paintbrush that I'll be using. You can put it back in place when you're finished, but I don't think it's necessary. I didn't replace mine when I was finished, and the spray nozzle still worked the same as it did before I removed that part. The main thing that you want to be careful about when you're painting with the Reactive Mist, at least if you're as clumsy as I am, is to not accidentally knock the bottle over because the mist is very liquid and would quickly make a mess wherever it spills. So just try to remember if you can to hold on to the bottle as you're working. Okay, after the bottle is set, I'm going to turn on the Minc and adjust it to heat setting 4, which is the setting that gives me very good results for most of the things that I foil. Then I'll place a piece of scrap paper under a piece of white cardstock that I've cut to A2 size, which is 4 1/4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches tall. The scrap paper will protect my work surface from the previously mentioned sticky and tacky mess that can happen with the Reactive Mist as it starts to dry. For painting, you'll want to use brushes that aren't expensive. I like this set of brushes from Crayola because they come in different sizes and only cost around $5 for a set of 5, so I'll be sad but not too heartbroken if some of the Reactive Mist dries on the brush and ruins it. To help prevent this, I always keep a cup of water off to the side of my work area and immediately place the brushes into it between uses. For this project, I'll be using the largest of the 3 brushes that I have here. I'll carefully dip the brush into the Reactive Mist, and I'll start painting horizontal stripes on the white cardstock. If you want heavier coverage, then you'll want to dip the brush into the Reactive Mist after painting each stripe, which is what I do for the first few stripes. If you want lighter coverage in more textural areas, then you only need to dip your brush in the mist maybe every 1 1/2 to 2 stripes, which is what I did more as I worked my way down the cardstock. It's hard to see here, but I'm trying to space the stripes pretty evenly, but you don't need to be exact at all here because we're going for that trendy brushy look. After I'm finished painting the stripes, I'll immediately put my brush into the cup of water that I mentioned earlier, and I'll screw the nozzle back onto the bottle of Reactive Mist. At this point, you can allow the piece that you just painted to air dry, or you can use a heat tool to help speed things up. I'm going to use a heat tool, and I'll hold on to the cardstock with craft tweezers to keep from burning my fingers. With the heat tool, you can dry the Reactive Mist in as little as a couple of minutes, but watch for areas where the coverage is heavier because it can take longer to dry those out, and it's very important that everything is completely dry before running it through the Minc. After the piece is completely dry, I'll cut a piece of Minc Reactive foil large enough to cover it completely, and I'll run it through the Minc using a clean folded piece of scrap paper as a transfer folder. I use scrap paper, aka plain printer paper, just in case something isn't completely dry because I don't want to ruin one of the plastic Minc transfer folders. When I remove the foil piece, you can see the brushy, textured effects that I got, especially in the areas where I didn't re-dip my paintbrush before painting the next stripe. Okay, I'll set this aside for the time being, and we're going to move on to the next element. I used a Silhouette Cameo to cut this lettered love cut file from white cardstock, and we're going to paint it as well. I'll remove my paintbrush from the cup of water where it's been soaking, and I'll dry it off using a paper towel. Then I'll remove the nozzle from the bottle of Reactive Mist again, dip the paintbrush into the mist just like I did earlier, and start painting. You can paint the die cut while it's on the piece of scrap paper, or you can hold it in your hand as you're painting it. Either way, it's a little bit messy, but I found that if I hold the piece while painting it, I have a bit more control and get less of the reactive mist on the back of the piece. If I paint the piece while it's on the scrap paper, the mist tends to seep underneath more. After I'm finished painting, I'll immediately place my brush into a cup of water to soak, and then I'll screw the nozzle back onto the bottle of reactive mist, which is kind of tricky but still doable with one hand. I'll hold the painted piece at the very edge using craft tweezers as I dry the glue with the heat tool. And I want to be sure to heat it on the back too, to dry any mist that may have gotten onto that side. Again, it's very important that the painted pieces are completely dry before you run them through the Minc. If they're not, you could end up with a sticky, misty, minky mess. Trust me, you really don't want that. When this piece is completely dry, I'll cut a piece of the Minc Matte Champagne Reactive Foil large enough to completely cover it, and I'll place it into my makeshift transfer folder and run it through the Minc. After I remove the foil piece, I have a pretty pearly gold sentiment. When I cut this piece earlier, I actually cut two, and I'll glue the second die cut to the back of the foiled die cut to strengthen the piece. I like to do this with more delicate shapes, especially if I'm going to use them to create dimension, which is what I'll be doing with this sentiment. I've trimmed the pink foiled piece from earlier by 1/4 inch so it will be slightly smaller than an A2 card front, and I'll attach it to the center of a pre-cut top folding A2 size card base. I'll finish the card by adhering the love sentiment to the pink foiled piece using dimensional adhesive foam squares that I cut to fit. I won't be mailing this card, so I'm not worried about the sentiment getting smushed down in the mail. But if you are mailing the card, you can always use craft glue to adhere the sentiment in place instead of using the foam adhesive squares. I hope that this project has given you some new ideas about how you can use a paintbrush with the Mint Reactive Mist to add custom foil accents and embellishments to your card making and papercraft projects. You can find a full list of supplies used in this project in the description area below, or in the area below the video if you're watching on k.becca.com. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more hot foiling projects with the Minc, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll tune in again soon.